So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'm Dodge, as you probably know, and I'm with Vanessa LaRose, who has been an advocate and one of the younger advocates in trying to speak truth to power. And as a former Scientologist, she has done everything she can to take the cult to task. So we'll start off, Vanessa, kind of tell me a little bit about your background. I believe you were born in San Diego. Your dad was kind of this interesting surfer dude. Your mom was committed to Scientology, and then you were created. So yeah, I guess we'll start from the beginning because you have such an interesting story.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Start from the beginning. Yeah, my dad was this cool surfer dude. He got into Scientology. He felt he had tried all different religions, and Scientology was the one for him. He met my mom. They decided to have a little girl. Apparently, I came and visited them before I was born. I introduced
Interesting.
myself. I was born in San
Wow. Oh,
Diego, but we moved up to Los Angeles when I was 5. We moved right across the street from the Celebrity Center in Hollywood. And so I grew up in the Los Angeles area. I went to all Scientology based schools that were supposedly for normal people too, but they do
right.
use a lot of L. Ron Hubbard technology. And I was disconnected from my friends and loved ones, unfortunately, about 7.5 years ago.
Mhm.
But I just went on and I got educated after that. So I got a associate's degree in psych from Los Angeles City College, and then I got a bachelor's degree in psych from California State Long Beach.
Wow.
And in the last 7 months, I have been speaking out against Scientology. I've been working in mental health for a year and a half. Um, and Scientology really doesn't like that. I'm a second
Not
generation
at all.
member who is discussing mental health a lot and they don't like it. So I've been getting fair gamed up the wazoo and harassed and all of the things that happen when you speak out. I did not expect it to be so intense, to be honest, but it's been happening. So here we are.
Intense. So when you first got out, were you
Oh,
like,
and I have a YouTube channel.
yes,
I'll
and please,
tell my name of my
yes.
YouTube channel is The Gray Zone with Vanessa LaRose. So you
Uh,
guys go subscribe it. I need some more subscribers and hours
yes.
actually so I can get it monetized.
I hear you. That's a headache. I just got monetized, but not making anything off of it. But yeah, it's a step.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It is a hurdle if nothing else. So now it's like,
Mhm.
now I have to wait like 2 years to actually make real money, probably. But you never.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, great. That means nothing. Okay, cool. But no,
Yeah.
it's still gonna get. And Vanessa, if you guys like the conversation and kind of relate to her mission life, she also has a GoFundMe to support her work with helping people kind of coming out of Scientology. So yeah, so interesting. So were you like what, 19, 20, give or take, when you first left Scientology?
It's a very gradual process. I mean, as a
Yeah.
teenager, I was always fighting. I was
Okay.
fighting back. But essentially I was going with the program until about 21. I had some debt already from Scientology based school and I became a bartender, and that really helped me to open up my eyes to the outside world. I met a lot of people who I never would have met in my little bubble. Um, and so it was a slow burn out. I was 30 years old when my parents stopped talking to me, and
Wow.
I lost a lot of close friends who were like family members, just can't talk to me
Sorry.
anymore.
Yeah.
And that was 6.5 years ago. I'm 36.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, that's so when you were a bartender, do you still kind of have that relationship with your parents, and do you just show up less to auditing, or was it kind of this like cognitive dissonance? Or at that point, did you kind of know, like, did you not no longer believe in the church necessarily? Or is that kind of the spark that started it?
There's a lot of people who are in the category of what we call under the radar.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they know that they themselves are
Yes, you
out,
knew at the
but
time.
they don't
Yeah.
want to lose their family. Yeah,
Right.
I mean, there's so many
Right.
people, hundreds that I grew up with who they know that it's whack. They just aren't going to lose their family, so they're never going to
Right.
act out about it, you know?
And they'll kind of bite their tongue.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So they,
Yeah, it happens. It's safety. I mean, who wants to lose their parents?
right. No, it's a scary thing. And that's the thing, is like, I always wondered, it's like, how long can you keep a charade up like that, where you say to your parents, yes, I'm an active believer, or I validate what you believe, but you're not an active member of that church. Like, can you do that in Scientology? Like in Jehovah's Witnesses, which gets a lot of comparisons, you
Yeah.
can't necessarily do that. So it's interesting. I never really asked them.
You can slide.
Okay.
You can let it slide. Like
Yeah,
if
interesting.
you're just kind of going with the, like, you're not creating waves. They just
Right,
don't create waves and don't
right,
speak up. Like if you're talking about Scientology publicly, like I'm doing right now on
right.
YouTube, like you're done.
Yes, of
But if
course.
you just kind of like don't go in session anymore and you don't
Ah,
go on course as a second gen, I mean, not
right,
as a first gen. As a first gen, you're more like getting in trouble and stuff.
right,
But as a second gen, they just want us to shut the F up
right.
and they just want us to be quiet. So they'll leave us alone if we leave them alone, kind of thing.
It's
In my
interesting.
experience.
Yeah, it's interesting to have the discussion with you, because you bring a unique experience as well. Because a lot of the other people who are former Scientologists, they can't relate to it because they were like in the Sea Org, or or working at one of the
Yeah.
celebrity centers. So everything revolved
Yeah.
around they ate, drank, slept, and breathed it.
True. So those are Sea Org members.
Right,
Yeah.
of
And I
course.
was a
Yeah.
public
Right,
Scientologist.
right, right,
So
right,
there is, you're very right. There's a definite difference between the people who were in the Sea Org and could
right.
not have a break or anything. I was so lucky in that I got to build relationships outside of the church. So
Interesting.
I met people who to this day have had my back, even when this whole fair gaming thing is going on.
Yeah.
But knowing people on the outside world has been a savior, you
Right,
know.
right.
A
And
lot of people don't have that who were working it full time. They just don't have those
no,
safety
so it's
nets.
completely alien to them, whereas like you at least
Yeah.
able to like have other conversations with other people and see like what you could do on the other side necessarily, or like that the other
Yeah.
side existed. It wasn't that scary because it's kind of like,
I
oh, if you,
tested it a little bit.
right, right,
But
right.
I also kept it, I don't tell people I'm a former
No, I
Scientologist for a
assume when you were a
very long
bartender,
time.
you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't like get in a conversation, be like, oh yeah, I'm a Scientologist. No, no. So I wonder,
No.
this is a fun thing. When you were a bartender, you probably couldn't remember, but
Yeah.
did you ever hear people talking smack about Scientology? And did it ever affect you? Like, because you were in LA, so it was a well-known organization over there. I was wondering, and was there something that ever like kind of
Yeah.
pinked your head, like, oh man, they're talking smack, and maybe they're kind of right.
Uh that point. So what happened
Kind of
for
out the
us,
door.
all the biggest thing was South Park.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
And
Yeah. That's
that was like, I mean, I was still a believer when South Park
you
came
were.
out,
Wow.
right? I
Okay.
was still, yeah, I was a teenager. Like
Right.
it
Right.
came out and I was definitely in the fold. So when people started laughing at us because of South Park, that kind of hurt. Like there's a definite,
Interesting. Huh?
like, you kind of feel like you're a total fucking loser. So you're not going to tell anybody where you came from. Um, and that left a sting, like, so you kind of just learn to like keep quiet. I would hear
Yeah.
people talking trash about Scientology all the time. My
Yes.
whole life, they've
Okay. So
talked trash about Scientology.
yeah.
We just, we're just super trained to not listen to it. I mean, we don't care. You're really like, you think you're an elitist and that like
Right.
you have the
Love
tech
it.
that's going to clear the planet. So
Right.
like that they're just ridiculous.
Right. I mean, you say the same thing for the LDS or Jehovah's Witnesses or
Mm-hmm.
and that's the question I want to go back to, just because you say your dad was looking at all these different religions. I was wondering, do you ever look at an alternate
Yeah.
universe of like what other religion did he look at? And like, man, why Scientology?
Yeah.
Was he looking at Buddhism and Taoism? And then all of a sudden, unfortunately, I had to land on
I've
Scientology.
thought about that one a
Yeah.
lot.
Your life can be
And there
completely
was a
different.
prophet. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there was a prophet in Virginia Beach that he was really
Oh,
into.
Casey?
It
Was
was
it Edgar Casey or a different dude?
yeah, it was Edgar
Yeah, Edgar.
Casey. It was Edgar
I've
Casey.
traveled all around the continent. I've been to I think I tried to get hypnotized at the Edgar Casey Center in Virginia Beach.
See, it's
Yeah,
fascinating. I mean,
it is.
it's really fascinating
So that's
stuff,
interesting. So he
you
comes from
know?
the Edgar Casey school of, yeah, that was a phenomenon in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Okay.
Yeah.
So you
It
got
is
some good roots.
interesting. So you kind of like, and we all know we give our, I say we, like second gens a lot. We give our parents a lot of slack. Like it was the 60s or the
Yeah.
70s or
That's what's a
the
move,
80s,
right? You
things
see why
were
Scientology,
different.
right?
No, like it was just, it wasn't Scientology it is today. It was like fun for them,
Right,
kind of,
right,
and like
right.
hippie, so the fact that he came from that movement, it
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense to me. My mom, though, on the other hand, she just got a personality test on the front door
Interesting.
and she filled it out. Yeah.
And it was from A to B. Because that's at some point I want to do a historical video because it's like, if you don't realize there are like two big religious moments. First, there's the burnt over era in the early 1900s in like Western New York, whereas the Jehovah's Witnesses at the same time as the Mormons, at the same time as the Quakers. And then in the 70s, it's really Scientology. It's the kind of new wave celebration of Christ, less denominational. It's, Children of God, the flirty.
New age.
Yeah, New Age, yeah. The New
Yeah.
Age, like off-branch, vaguely Christian, might identify themselves as
Yeah.
Christian, but not really. So he was a product of that time.
Yeah.
You realize like that's how Scientology was, and even with L. Ron Hubbard, with Dianetics, it was a lot of power of positive thinking, which early 1950s was the
Yeah.
first time people started thinking away from God. So it's so interesting. So you're a
He
bartender.
should have stopped with Dianetics. Like he really should have.
Yes.
Honestly.
Right,
Like
right.
the
Just people
Dianetics
good.
has like, it's weird, but it could have stopped there and been a
Right.
whole lot cooler. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right. Right. There was in the 50s and stuff, there was a way where it liberated some people and some people from traditional
yeah.
Christianity and ways to think about spirituality, where it was only in the 50s where people started becoming a little more secular or a little less dogmatic. And so there's a lot of good. And in some ways,
Yeah.
Scientology created that bridge of being less, ironically, of allowing people to be less committed to Christ in the way that is the traditional Christian ethos. But then it ends up still doing
Yeah.
just as much damage. So it's interesting.
Well, and Scientology is always the one that they pick out as the example of freedom of religion, right?
Right,
So
right.
it works
Speaking
both
of which,
ways.
right, exactly. And
Yeah.
it does. Right. And they say, and I've been very lightly fair games compared to you, but they said when I did my honest piece about Scientology, the Stans League, that's the fake Twitter account, posted something with my picture saying, I'm a religious bigot. Yeah, I thought that was deeply ironic. Was
Yeah.
kind of an honor. Thank you,
Congratulations.
right? Right. Hello, Kurt, still watching. So that's interesting. You've had it's an interesting early background. So you're bartender for a while, and then what made you? So what, if you don't mind me asking, what made you kind of disconnect with your mother? Right? If I'm not mistaken, your father was kind of a little more out of it and didn't care, but there's more of a head-on collision with your mother, if I'm not mistaken.
No, there was head-on collision with both.
Interesting. Okay, so both. Okay, So they're both into it.
Yeah. They're just divorced, and so it
Right.
was two different
Okay,
processes,
so
if
it's
you will.
great.
But
Okay,
it was
double the
it's
trouble.
it's full on disconnection from both.
Wow.
And the this final point, I guess I just started feeling like I was kind of losing my mind having to pretend all the time.
Fascinating. Okay.
And it just, after a while, you don't want to be a character around your own family member. Like,
Right.
you just want to relax and you want to be real and authentic. And I place a lot of importance on authenticity.
Yeah.
So to have to go hang out with your parent or a close friend, and they're literally in a different world, like they're still using all of the words, and so your brain goes back into that, and then you're kind of just playing along with their false reality, and it started to make me feel crazy. Like going between the worlds all the time. It was just a lot.
Languages, right? Well, I always wonder that.
Yeah, but no, I got letters. I got a letter in the mail from my father. It was a horrible it's like a breakup letter from my dad. Like,
yeah,
that's
they
cool.
are, yeah.
Yeah. And then my mom told me in person and I was just sobbing. But I was also starting to study psychology and that was on the table and they really don't like that. So
Oh, that's
I kind of
fascinating.
knew it would come
You're
eventually.
realizing that was a passion. That's kind of more the outwardly step where now disconnection is necessary because now, oh, my daughter, instead of anybody else, would be like,
Yeah.
oh, cool, my daughter's studying to be a psychologist. It's like, my daughter's
Yeah.
studying Satanism. If you were,
Yeah. Even when I went to be a bartender, my mom was like, can you do food service instead?
oh wow, really?
Like it
Um,
wasn't that was, yeah.
is Scientology? I was wondering, is Scientology anti-drinking? I don't think so, right? Or was there ever a clause about that? I'm
Teens,
sure it's
we
too many.
drank so much because
I'd
we were
imagine.
so depressed and we
Yeah.
couldn't do drugs.
Right?
We
You can't
just
smoke
had
pot, right? Can you
drinking and
smoke pot
syrup.
or no?
No,
Oh,
no.
tragic.
So we had so many of us were like straight up alcoholics for
Funny, interesting.
teenage years all through the
Yeah.
20s.
Yeah.
But we would get in trouble for it. It's not like
Oh,
Scientology
interesting.
was like, yeah, here's some wine.
Right.
Like, no, we would get in trouble, but it
Right.
was the only thing we could do. So,
Right.
Scientology is
Interesting.
not big on drinking. They don't really want you to be drinking. You
No.
can't go in auditing or on course if you've been drinking.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. But still, but your mother didn't want you serving alcohol, and that was because so the
Yeah,
image needs to
isn't
be.
that funny? Like it was
Yeah. Yeah.
better in her mind,
It's funny.
the imagery of me being a food
Right.
service person.
I
Yeah.
always wondered if you have parents that are committed Scientologists and you have dinner with them one night. Does almost every other sentence like circle back to some sort of language in Scientology? Like, would you even talk about them, like talk to them about other stuff? Like, I don't know, maybe you met a nice friend, or this is interesting that's happening in politics, or this is an interesting social phenomenon, or is it all kind of like a one-trick pony?
That's a good question. I have a book here that's our
Well,
technical dictionary, and it's about this
that's
thick, and
hardcore.
it's
So there you
all words,
go. Right. Yeah.
yeah, that are just a whole new language, right? So, what I know about the brain now and creating new neural pathways, it is challenging because every time you sit down with somebody who's still in that world, you're just completely launching all these old uh words back into
Right.
your mind, back in your vocabulary. You're like,
Right.
you're not necessarily moving on. You're keeping it alive a little bit because those conversations are filled with those words,
Right.
and those words are filled with false concepts.
Interesting.
So the commentary on the world is filled with false content.
Ha.
Like,
Right.
oh, that's just, they have an ARC break. And it's
Right.
like, but
Right.
normal people don't talk like that,
What the
you
yeah,
know?
that was an ARC break. Right, right. So that's it. So everything
Yeah.
will
Like if
circle
we're
back into the
talking about,
vocabulary. Right,
yeah, if you're talking about politics,
right,
literally they'll use a Scientology word to
right,
describe what's going on.
right. If you
So
you're right, like instead of saying, "Oh, I think that person's a liar," you'll be like, "That person's withholding so many overts," or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that
yeah,
person needs
right,
some auditing,
right,
and
right,
they need this rundown. And you're like, okay.
right. That's the hallmark of a cult, where because you have a certain subset of vocabulary, every single point of conversation can be brought back to your obsession with Scientology, which is
Yeah.
is that one of the reasons you wanted to go into kind of helping people in psychology? Because could you see kind of the power of words and simply the way you observe something and how
Yeah.
you could see it? Interesting. Good for you.
So, I mean, we were taught very strong methods of how to communicate with people. And from a very young age, you're taught that Scientology is to help people. So I definitely have like that humanitarian spirit, but also learning the ways that all of that was completely wrong and like how to actually listen to people instead of just acknowledge them has
Right.
been a huge thing, and learning how to mirror and have like therapeutic conversations that actually help folks out instead of make them feel worse
Right.
it's been so rewarding, and it's been
Yeah.
like my own way of figuring my way out of Scientology because I
Right.
got to study all of these incredible concepts, incredible scientists, therapists, people along the way who have made a difference.
Yeah.
And you know what? L. Ron Hubbard's name is not in any of those books.
No, no, nor is Edgar Cayce.
It's not.
Right,
So,
right, yeah.
like he didn't actually research or
Right,
invent anything.
right. He's no Freud.
So,
Right, right. Good point.
mhm.
Right,
But
right.
he used to reference my buddy Freud. He
That's
would say
hilarious.
that.
I did not know that. Really?
Totally would say that. Like my buddy Freud, but he'd also be like my buddy Jack Parsons. You're like,
Yes, right. Satanist. Right?
cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah. Scientology has before it, I mean, not Scientology, but L. Ron Hubbard has black magic, ties.
Yeah, right. What? Like, was he in that same house where they like all slept with each other's girlfriends or whatever as like Jack Parsons? And yeah, it was
He
really
stole
weird.
Jack Parsons' wife.
Right. L. Ron Hubbard did, right? That's right. He was the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Stole Jack Parsons' wife.
Yeah,
right.
He
Did
totally
he
did.
take her on the boat too, or did he take the next wife?
I think so.
Yeah.
He has a couple wives, but
right.
yeah, I think that was the one that he stole,
Yeah.
and it was like the original Scientology. Yeah, they were trying to create like a magical sex ritual baby.
Right. That's what he wanted. He wanted like a master race type baby type thing, which is, I don't wonder there's some eugenics ties too between L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology.
There is.
It really?
I swear to you.
Okay, yeah, I'm not surprised.
I mean, in my opinion, it's not mentioned very often, but there is definitely, I mean, he's super racist. Right. So like if you like are listening to a lot of things, yeah, it was the 60s, but like he literally says that black people can't be helped, basically.
Right, I've heard that. Right. That actually leads me to ask another random question. So you went to a school that was not an official Scientology school, but I assume one that was sort of financed by them and implemented a lot of the teachings of dynamics. Was your school?
Actually, the schools have to pay Scientology. They have to license.
That's wild. So they were taken seriously enough. Yeah. An actual accredited school paid Scientology to like use their coursework.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's wild. God, they're really well respected.
They have to pay tithes. It's a chapter called Applied Scholastics. Right. And so they run all the schools that then pay tithes to Scientology to be using the study technology.
That's wild. I did not,
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
And it's expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, these schools are not cheap. My parents worked so hard to be able to send me to these schools,
Right. So what, yours was like technically a private school?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I'm curious, was there any diversity?
Yeah, and we would pass off as like a regular school. Like we would play softball against other small private schools, like
yeah, right.
We would pretend like we were totally normal. The diversity was pretty lacking.
I'd imagine.
To answer your question, it was pretty lacking.
I'd imagine.
I have one friend who's like a black Scientologist too, who are black Scientologists, and then not many Asian people, not many Mexican people, not many Hispanic origin. It's
right, middle of LA.
Yeah, other than the people who are trafficked from other countries, because they do that.
Right, is that now a thing now, or is there like labor trafficking at this? It seems like there probably is. Yeah. Because they could get away with putting people in the Sea Org still and paying them.
And they hold their passport.
Right. God, that's scary. Do you think any of have you been following some of the TikTok stuff with the Sebastian dude and like, so do you think
I have, but I've been trying to stay away from it because I literally had to leave LA, and I'm a little bit shocked that people are like flying there to go and do this stuff. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I just honestly, when I watch it, I'm like, this is wild. Like,
yeah. I mean, they're successful, I guess, in getting them to like no longer go outside and try to recruit.
But for me, I'm like, I actually feel really bad for the people who are walking out, the Sea Org members and stuff, who are being yelled at or whatever, because that's not effective in changing people's minds.
Well, that's the thing. I do feel kind of bad for them. And it's like kind of like don't shoot the messenger. Like they, it's really not on them. They're kind of brainwashed. and you're just kind of making them
I'm
really
kind of
scared.
wondering if, yeah, it does it make it worse or does it help? I don't know.
Right, right,
But I don't think that it makes it better for the people who are walking by and they're
right.
like I remember being scared of the protesters.
Interesting. Interesting.
So
When
it
you when,
becomes like,
yeah. No, when you were when you would be confronted with protesters, what did you think? Did you feel like just like try to separate myself as much as I can? Was there would they ever say a sentence like
yeah.
you thinking, or was it just the reflex of like I have to separate myself
Well,
and
we knew ahead of time that the big anonymous protest was going to be happening way back when it was a huge thing
oh
when
right,
anonymous
sure. That's a big
um
mid like late 2000s, right? Or something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
We were
right.
told though to stay away from certain areas. We were
Right.
told it was going to happen and it did happen.
Right.
Um but as far as protesters, I remember a lot when I was a kid. So when we would go
Yes.
to these big events, it was terrifying. They would walk by with these Scientology kills, with a picture of a lady on it who is Lisa McPherson,
Right.
who
Sure.
is,
The hotel room and
uh,
yeah.
a great topic to talk about too. But
Yeah.
I do have the visual of looking at my parents and being like, are are we okay? Like, are we in a thing that killed people?
Huh, so you actually
Like,
asked. I always wondered, do the protesters, do they get that one Scientologist walking by? Do they actually get them thinking? So that's interesting. You actually did ask your parents and like,
sometimes
right. And so what was the response? Just like, I assume, no, they're, suppressive and
they're just like, no, those people are crazy.
that's it. Right.
Like, don't even look over there. They're
Right.
suppressive. Just stay away. We're
Right.
going to go this way. We're just going to walk around. It
Yeah.
was like, it makes you more attached to the group because then
Right.
it's like us
Right. Us
versus
versus
them.
them. Right. 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 You dig into your
Yeah.
heels. Right. And you feel like you're being
Yeah.
victimized and then you have something to fight for in some way. Uh,
Yeah.
that's a scary thing. So what, so you didn't want to put up appearances. So what is that when you are officially kind of departing from Scientology? Did you do anything public, or was it just, did you tell your parents I'm not into it, or what were those kind of first initial steps? Like what was like
It was actually a choice that was presented to me as because my best friend's mother left and she spoke out.
okay.
And so I was told that I need to disconnect from my best friend
So there was
or
that.
I lose my parents.
Wow. And who
Yeah.
tells you this? Is it an auditor? Is it somebody at it?
It was my parent via, like, they had
Right.
written something that she
Right.
had to ask me and read
Right.
to me, like the officials,
Right. Right.
And
Interesting.
at a certain point, it was like, it's not fair that they frame it like you're choosing your friend over your family. That's
No, you
not
don't have to.
fair. You're choosing
Right.
your Second Amendment rights. The
Right.
freedom of speech is what
Yeah.
I was choosing,
Right. 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 But that's how they frame it. And they're
But
right.
then I was silent. I didn't even bring it up for 7 years.
So that's just, so were they willing to kick you out just because you were willing to associate or go to that friend's house? And was it,
Yes.
so it was that simple? Interesting. Right.
That's my best friend. I mean, we
Right.
weren't gonna
Who
stop
talks in the corner.
talking,
Right. And then what made you want to go on YouTube and kind of be more of a powerful voice in that regard?
It's quite simple. There was the Danny Masterson rape trial going
Right.
on,
Yeah.
and all I saw of people who were covering the case is men. And it was either Tony Ortega, it was Aaron Smith Levin, it was
right.
all the people who are talking about it are men.
Point.
And
God, that's
I was starting to get pissed off.
Fair. Fair. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, God, I never thought. Yeah.
Made my own channel.
Right. Good for you.
Yeah, I was like, we need a female voice up in here and a little bit more like different opinions and not just like, one news source or whatever. There needs to be like different people talking about these topics and from a therapeutic viewpoint.
Yeah.
I mean,
I speak that language.
I've learned so much cool stuff about psychology and crisis intervention, all these cool things that I was like, I need to share this.
Right.
Like,
They're actually
I
helpful.
opened up my eyes because people on YouTube, and I learned so much. But
Right.
then I also can contribute to the conversation now, which
Right.
makes me happy.
Right. You have that language of expertise. That kind of makes sense. I have like it sucks. I think I had to open a new Zoom because Zoom sucks. I don't pay for it. Do you mind if
Okay,
I end it and then create a new one?
no problem.
So I think we should be good for at least 40 minutes, but 40 minutes should be enough time. There's
Good.
a lot to talk about. So
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah.
So yeah, so we're talking, so yeah, we're talking about the, oh yeah, what, seeing your best friend, simply wanting to maintain that relationship. So yeah, I guess you really can't do both at once in Scientology, even if you're not doing that. And at this point, I assume your parents were okay with you not doing weekly auditing. And so they're all right with that. It was
Yeah.
just maintaining a relationship that was the bridge too far.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then
When someone is disconnected, or when they're suppressive or considered PTS, which is a potential trouble source,
Right.
like
Right.
they might not think that my best friend is an SP, but she's connected to one because her mom is speaking out.
Right.
So that is enough to warrant full disconnection. Really horrible. They hold relationships with people hostage.
Right. Right. They really do.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, right. And so what made you want to be involved in psychology? Do you feel like exploring and studying the great works of people who have been pretty validated by science, did it help you kind of discover who you were and kind of make emotions? And do you feel like there's a direct connection?
Totally.
Okay, now I know how to help myself really from scratch. Now I can help other people.
It was so incredibly therapeutic to go through and read, starting with Freud, because we learn Freud as psychology students as this is where our history came from, but we don't
Right.
really use it anymore. But this is like the beginning of it. And Hubbard pulled so much from early psychology and
Interesting. Yeah.
psychiatry
The irony,
that
even though
it
they
was,
spoke against it. Right.
yeah.
Right. So
And it was
that's a
so
fact.
therapeutic to
Right.
read the things that were proposed. And then there were even techniques that I studied that are similar to auditing. And they would say, we don't use this because it causes transference and people fall in love with their therapist or this or that.
Right.
And
Right.
that's something that Scientology was like, yep, we're taking that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
Interesting.
wild. Yeah, no, studying
Right.
psychology has been the greatest blessing to me because as a second gen, I would just hear L. Ron Hubbard's words in my head sometimes.
Right.
Like, as if I'm asked to make a choice, sometimes I just get that Scientology answer. But when I'm forced to like read things, do projects, process, so much of the psychology classes are kind of about you processing things so that at the end you can help other people and you're not working through your own shit anymore. You know what I mean? So it was really just so helpful.
Right, right. So right, it sort of gives you unintentional training to be a decent psychologist
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Because right, if you're studying Scientology, so much of it's less, people obviously the Xenu stuff and all that comes so late. So much of it is just simply shaping people how to communicate, how to think about human social interactions, how to analyze them, how to look deeper beyond the surface. Unfortunately, all of that was for mind control and for bad, but you realize like, wow, I've been thinking in these psychological terms since I was a
Yeah.
kid. Unfortunately, it's been for bad, but I can now kind of, so in that sense, that might be the one benefit of growing up as a Scientology is you have this deep emotional understanding that somebody who might be minoring in psychology in undergrad might have. It might be very similar
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah. I mean, completely. And I'm surprised more people don't go and get degrees in psych afterwards, but a lot of us
Right?
have
It's a natural fit. Although there's a lot of
yeah,
self-reflection that might be painful for some people, I'd imagine, to because
totally. And a lot of
separate the
people just don't
things.
want to go to school because they're
Well,
really
sure.
intimidated by the public system because they never went to public school, right? So
Right.
just going to a college class is really intimidating for us.
Yeah. What was your first like 6 months of college like? Were you able to adjust? Were there saying words and ways to analyze things that you had no vocabulary for? growing up in a
I had
science.
to learn how to study. I mean,
Right,
Scientology
that would
has
even be a weird
very
concept.
they have very specific ways of studying. And
Right.
so to learn to study in the real world, I mean, it was a blessing. I went to Los Angeles City College, which has
Cool.
the most diverse campus. Like they actually got awarded like most diverse campus in
That's cool.
America.
That's different.
So yeah, it was
Yeah.
really awesome. And it was mostly people who were my age or
Right.
older. There weren't too many young kiddos that were like running around. And so it was
Right.
really helpful to just be around people who were very different than I was. But in the psych classes, we're very supportive of each other.
Different and similar in some ways too. It's interesting because in a city college versus maybe an elite private college, there might be kids that come from schools that don't have the same type of quality education that somebody from a wealthy suburban
Yeah.
school might go to. So it might be
Yeah.
an adjustment in the pants for them in that regard too.
Yeah.
So it's like both of you in different ways were starting from scratch. So I could see why you got
Totally.
on. Yeah. I could totally see that. And speaking of, I just heard your dog. I want to talk. Well, first about something I've never asked anybody about. How are dogs viewed in Scientology? I know David Miscavige had a beagle and he used to make people salute his beagle. Do they believe that dogs have thetans? I always mess up the pronunciation. It was thetans or thetans. Thetans, I think. But do they believe
Satan.
thetan, right? Do they believe that like dogs that they inhabit dogs as well, and that should dogs have auditing, or are they just like nothing? The dog seems very offended, so he probably knows the answer, and it's not a good one. But
So officially, L. Ron Hubbard didn't write too much about animals.
Yeah, it just wasn't addressed. Yeah.
It wasn't addressed super officially, but that being said, I believe he had some dogs. And then
Right.
I also had a lady who I worked with who we called the pet communicator, and she's a Scientologist.
Oh,
And so they fully believed that, like, when my dog passed away, I called her and I paid her for her services to communicate with my dog's Satan and tell me
ah,
about where my dog was.
wow.
And
Okay.
that my dog, she claimed that my dog was picking up a human body in Canada.
Okay.
So
That's awesome. That's a new one.
so I mean it made me feel
Yeah,
better, you know.
yeah, that's cool. I'm glad. Yeah, yeah. Some things you don't want to unlearn. So that
So, like, whatever.
right, because they do feel like people are thetans and have different bodies. So that's interesting that they could have, right,
So
could
as
dodge a
they
person.
just kind of look at it as like on a theta scale, and
Right,
like theta is like
right,
everything, right? So
right.
if it was like human beings are like really high up on the theta thetan, but then dogs are a little bit lower,
But
basically.
they
They're
are
just
on
like,
that some totem pole.
yeah, and plants are on there at the bottom as
That's
well.
interesting. Okay, huh? Huh. So like, but you would
Yeah.
never say like if a dog like took a dump on the rug, you wouldn't call the dog suppressive or say that's a suppressive act. You're not
No, but
no,
my
right.
dogs really do miss their grandma who they've been
Uh-huh.
disconnected from. I
Yeah.
mean, really, it's tragic
Yeah.
what they've had to go through. My poor
Oh.
dog.
Oh. How many dogs have you rescued altogether, do you think? Or fostered?
About 150.
Wow. God bless. That's
Yeah,
fast.
I've
150.
been doing it for about 15 years now.
Wild.
So I've had so many dogs come through my home as foster dogs. I've also had pregnant dogs who have had
Wow.
litters. So
Well,
I've taken care of so many little babies and
understood.
litters of doggies, and then placed them with their forever home. And it's something that just I've had really good. I'm a very empathic person. I'm very
Yeah.
sensitive,
Yeah.
and animals helped me a lot when I was in Scientology, just to feel not alone. I always had a cat or a dog.
Yeah.
And so it's grown, and it's been something for me to pay it forward, not only to the animals, but to the humans. Because sometimes I'm really playing matchmaker with like
Yeah.
a human and the dog, and the humans are benefiting so much too from
Yeah.
having the
Right.
relationships. So it's cool. And I've met a lot of great people through dog rescue.
Yeah, yeah. My dog. I was walking around in Mexico. Oh, cute. What's your dog's name?
This is Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars. I'll show you mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still scared of the fireworks. But
Oh, hey,
he's like half shepherd, I
what a
think.
cutie pie.
Sweetheart. But yeah, I was just walking around Mexico, and he was a street dog, just started following me, and um
Oh my
I could barely
gosh.
yeah, he's my first ever dog. I've never had a pet in my life. So he's like my first ever pet that I've
Oh,
ever had in my life. But he's made it easy. Yours is so cute too. Like some
yeah.
Chihuahua
He
mix.
was walking. Yeah, he's a Chihuahua mix. He was walking the streets of Compton by himself, just trying to
Hardcore.
like, yeah,
Okay.
just being, thuggish by himself in Compton
Looks
till
like a
he
real
got
dog. I
rescued.
can
And
tell.
now he lives the lavish life.
I could tell. Life of luxury.
Well, he's also married. He has a
Oh,
wife,
cool.
and
Oh,
this
they're
is
married.
Stella, his
Wow.
wife. Yeah.
Like the stunner.
Yeah. Thank you. She has so much clothes. It's ridiculous. It's really, truly ridiculous. Everybody will be like, "Oh, I bought Stella a dress." I'm like, "Thank you." She has a huge closet.
I love that. You got to dress it up, be fashionable. That's key. All right,
Yeah.
so that's actually something I want to ask. Speaking of wife, I was curious. All these conversations, like these little topics that I don't think have been necessarily discussed. You talked about dogs. What is dating like? What is dating like coming out of
Hmm.
Scientology? It seems like you have figured out now. You're attached, and I think doing well, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, what's that like to kind of get out there and figure that out? Because you can't even speak the language, really.
I'm not attached.
Oh, you're not. Oh, you're single. Okay, cool. Oh, I thought you might. Okay.
I was like, "Excuse me?" Uh,
You mean to
no,
misidentify you. Oh, cool. Okay. So
yeah,
we're
don't
both of us
misidentify
still
me,
figuring it out.
okay? Yeah, no, I'm still figuring it out. Yeah, it
Cool.
was
Cool.
challenging even dating within Scientology because you have such a small pool. It's
Yeah.
literally like you're expected to date a Scientologist, and granted, you only know Scientologists for the most part, but if you don't like the 15 guys in your class, like what are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But coming out, I have had different types of relationships with people, but it has taken me a long time to open up, first of all, and like tell people, even because honestly, it's embarrassing. Like, not only am I a former Scientologist, but I have like parents who won't speak to me,
Right.
and like all of these things that are really hard and challenging to just lay on somebody. Like, you don't do that on a first date, and
Yeah,
it's
right.
baggage, right? And like,
Yeah.
depending on how you look at it, it's either really cool and you're unattached, you
Yeah.
know.
But it's like you also almost have to seek out somebody that has this like unique ability to understand, to speak with emotional intelligence that a lot of people probably couldn't even have the vocabulary and language to that. So that must be scary, or else you can't really understand the way in which you grew up and like how you approach relationships. So yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I understand psychology is smart because you could be psychologist. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's, and have you tried to date that?
I
I was
tend to
wondering.
date like super people who have very untraditional backgrounds.
Cool.
That's who I
Yeah,
end
that
up
makes
with
sense, right?
because
Because
I
there's that
have a very
commonality. Right.
untraditional background.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that commonality where like something, not necessarily even something went bad, but something right was just different.
Yeah.
Where
Or
you
I've dated people who are like really high up in the music industry, and
Cool.
they're
Yeah.
used to being around the celebrities and doing that kind of
Right.
stuff because
Right.
growing up at Celebrity Center, I was used to that too. Like, there's certain things that like you can't just like
Right.
create. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, people are either been through certain experiences or they haven't. And sometimes I'm a little too weird for vanilla people,
I think
you
we're
know?
awesome, but right. Right.
I mean, moms are worried that I'm a Satanist and stuff. Like, I've straight up had
Really?
people's mothers. Yes, people's mothers are always like telling their moms are always telling their sons, like, that girl, she doesn't seem like a good Christian. You got to get her out of here. And I'm like, oh, what am I going to do with my life?
How are you dating, man?
Yeah. I'm more like a member of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster.
Hell yeah, respect. That's
I'm a
what
Pastafarian.
Pastafarian. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's all about love. That's all about love. And
Yeah. So I don't know. Still trying on that one.
good for you. Good for you. Well, hey, I'll drop you a line if I ever get to LA, which I'll probably get to in about 2 or 3 months, give or take.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
What are you doing out in LA? Talk about it.
But yeah, I'd love to have you back on about this because you have a lot of expertise, talking about Danny Masterson as well, and you've been involved giving your coverage. So yeah, I'm going to cover the lawsuit and kind of just stay camped out there, I think, because I think the lawsuit's going to last like 7 months, 8 months. I think, when does it really be? I think it probably like revs up in October or something like that. There's some preliminary.
For Leah?
Yeah. So I'll stay, and that's the most popular thing I do is the Scientology stuff. I've done the political stuff, which is I've done well and gotten some nice attention, which I appreciate. But the Scientology stuff is where it's at, and the dog really likes LA, so he'll have a good time. It's nice weather.
Well, that sounds awesome. You're gonna have to hit me up when you come out
here,
and
awesome.
Definitely get together, have lunch or something.
Yeah. I feel like you'd be cool to get to know. And then and maybe we'll do some digesting as well of the lawsuit stuff. And then that's another question I wanted to ask you. How do you feel about the whole Danny Masterson scene? Do you feel like you've made some connections with people in Scientology? Have you been able to kind of reveal the truth to them? Or do you feel at least like now you have the freedom to voice your opinion on Masterson and Scientology kind of from the perspective as a woman and somebody who has psychological training? And I guess has been talked about Masterson. Has that been helpful in your growth process in some strange way?
There's 2 parts to that.
I think I asked like 4 different questions, so sorry.
Yeah, I grew up going to the Masterson house. Like,
wow, really? Oh, you were like tight.
Yeah.
I did not know that. Wow. God, what were they?
Well, with their little brother, they have another brother that's
right. Well, there's a dude in Malcolm in the Middle, right? There's that dude.
Yeah.
He was
another brother.
Right. And then he had a younger. Okay. So you knew the younger.
Yeah. So it's awkward for me. This whole thing is very weird because we used to go, like, all the places that were brought up in the lawsuit and all that, they're all places that we all frequented. So it was very awkward for me at first when the trial started. And
it's like all the stuff flooding back.
Yeah. And then that's part of why I wanted to start a YouTube, because I was watching all the coverage and it was just men talking about it. And I wanted to lend a female voice to the conversation too. I have since met with the Jane Does, like, doing things. We met at the protests. Awesome. One of the Jane Does is like old family friend. So it's a really trippy time. And it's a time in Scientology that big things are changing. And I think we're excited about that. Like, I'm most excited that, because everybody knows that we didn't go to the police. We went to our own authorities, right? Like inside of the church.
Right.
And we get handled. So this is a big time and a big moment in that history that Danny was actually found guilty of doing what he shouldn't have been doing, Yeah, really well put. And I'm glad you were able to kind of shine some light on that. But God, that's fast. So you knew him way back then. What was Danny like when he was younger? Was he a nice enough guy? Was he? I mean, honestly, we got to go to so many cool things because of him. Like, him and the old 70s show guys, like, we used to go to the bars that they would own, like, we used to get to do things in the Hollywood scene that I wouldn't have been able to do if they weren't celebrities, so it's kind of a love-hate thing. I'm like, oh, that was fun back then. Oh, but I was also like 17, maybe shouldn't have been at a bar, Are you
that young? Well, and how old was he at all this time?
I don't know.
Yeah, probably
on that 70s show, at least, you know.
Well, was there any truth, because you hung out with them, was there any truth to the rumor that, like, that cast part of that cast like kind of creeped on people a little too aggressively in the bar scene back then, and some people say they could see some of these actions.
I mean, clearly,
Well, yeah, sure, yeah. I was wondering if you
he
saw
was
it.
found guilty.
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But I was wondering if you saw Colonels early on, because people say even 5 years before the incidents described,
Scientology guys,
they were Colonels.
Scientology guys are, in general, are just were pretty like, if they want something, they're gonna get it.
That's interesting. So
you're
so they're like more aggressive, probably to the point of being either legally or morally wrong. In terms, but that's interesting, but that's kind of a Scientology ethos in some way, right? Because I'd imagine that, because you don't have a real education, so I'd imagine there's also no sex ed of consent, of how a woman feels comfortable, of how to ask somebody out in a respectful manner. No, right, none of that. So even that's the dating thing that makes me think about that again, because right, it's like you have to learn all of this stuff from scratch of even how to treat
and boundaries.
Boundaries, right?
Yeah.
Right.
There's a guy who I had met
Fascinating.
who I knew as a kid, and I met him as an adult, and he had left Scientology, and he told me that the way he meets women is he follows them to their door. And I was like, what? Can you not, please don't do
I
that?
should laugh at
That's
that.
not
Oh my
right.
God.
Yeah.
But that would be normal, right? There's no like conversation. And that's a thing too. It's like,
Yeah.
right, because everything circles back to Scientology. So it's like if you're a young man and you want to have a conversation with your dad, as I had when I was a young man, of Dad, if I'm feeling all these things, how do I respectfully ask a woman out? How do I not become creepy?
Yeah.
But right, they probably don't even have those conversations. It's probably like, oh, well, this person's, withholding too many overts or whatever. Right, everything circles back to that vocabulary. So these normal life.
I mean, Ron had 3 wives, right? The founder
Right,
had
and I
3
heard,
wives.
well, and I heard there
So
was, I don't think I say an R word, but I heard Ron was guilty of, that whole kit and caboodle, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Right. And it's never an excuse, obviously, because with Danny Masterson, he knew the rules as he became a successful actor. But it's a fascinating character study, because you could probably see with that lack of education, a lack of a normal education and normal social environment, where your reflex is to follow the most animalistic reflex that ignore boundaries. And that's a normal thing. And if you don't try to that's why I admire you, because I'd imagine you could probably also talk to so many Scientologists and maybe talk to some men, young men getting out and be like, this is how to communicate. This is how to think about dialogue.
Boundaries is huge.
And
boundaries, we're not taught boundaries. And we're on purpose not taught boundaries. Like, we are just taught that the cult can access us at any time. Right? Literally.
Right. It's kind of like, well, the cult is good. I could do it too, in some ways. Because everything is less. You are less than your church, and that person is less than you, who is the most committed person to the church, who is the holiest.
And who's the celebrity? I mean, they worship.
Talk about valuing worship, right? Instead of worshiping a god, you worship the celebrity. Once you become the celebrity, you don't need boundaries.
Yeah.
It's a little scary.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Right. So as a child, you're like, I guess I have to become famous to get any kind of respect around here.
Yeah, right. That's wild. So now I'm curious. So you said you were also fair gamed by Scientology, as was I, obviously, and they got me fired. Miss Stanley did their thing. I was worried about them poisoning my dog. Luckily, they did not do that. They only did it to that one gentleman. So yeah, how have they tried to fair game you?
I've been followed for the past 7 months.
Oh my God! So you know people followed. Jesus.
Yeah. People have literally at the gas station just filming me. Really obvious stuff. I have a troll who's like been talking about me and his war on me for like 6 months now. Who I'm pretty sure has to be.
Are you talking the Tony? Yeah,
dude. And he won't let it go. And I'm like, you have to be getting paid, because this is ridiculous. Like, the things that you're doing are the same kind of artwork that they put out about Leah, and the same artwork that the Stan League puts out. And like all that. So maybe that's just a troll, but it goes hand in hand with the second I spoke up, the second I started getting followed, and then I have someone over there tearing me apart every day, like physical appearance, all the things that would make somebody feel like shit. You know what I mean? So you're like,
Right.
why would anybody do that to a survivor? That's not really funny. So it has
No.
to be, you know, I think that is part of it. I think that
Huge
in
part.
general, yeah, just the feeling that they try to create is that you can't get away from it, that they're big and you're small,
Right.
right? So I have just been trying to get a little bit of peace. I have found it in the last month or so. But I've also kind of been quiet. Like I was doing a channel called Degraded Daughters of Dianetics.
Sure.
I'm not doing that anymore.
Okay. Interesting.
Um, and I'm talking mostly about mental health on my channel, and not because I'm afraid of anything, but
No.
because that's what I think is most important right now, and what survivors need to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Everybody else is doing a really good job covering everything else, you know?
yeah, right. And that's kind of my perspective. I dip in and out, and I have other topics that I like as well. And it's like, right,
Yeah.
and I think that can generate a new audience too, because people watching me or people being aware that I was a news anchor and have some sort of basis of knowledge in politics. You're like, oh, cool, that guy actually knows what he's talking about. And I found it through Scientology, but he has this tangible expertise in politics. And now I can go to the political videos.
Yeah.
And you, like I've seen a couple of your videos as well about de-stressing and mental health. And it's like same thing. Like, oh, you had that unique understanding of psychology and what it's like to grow up with emotional neglect in a lot of ways, and neglect and self-worth and neglect and self-pride. And you could add this unique expertise to the world of psychology, where you might not even be talking about Scientology, but you bring these unique nuggets. So yeah, I'm all
Through
about
lived
diversifying.
experience.
Lived experience, precisely. Right. And I'm all about that. Some people have very narrow channels, some people don't. Are you going to continue the Daughters of Dianetics, or do you feel like you've done some good work and call it a day?
I leave it there as a cult classic. Like
I
I
like
feel
that.
that
Cult classic, literally. Yeah,
I
right.
feel like we did a
That's funny.
lot of really awesome things. We built it up to almost 7,000
Yes, a
subscribers.
lot. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, it only took 6 months and it was a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
But I feel it like as an individual, it's hard to have a partnership in general
Yeah.
as just anything in life. So then as an individual, I was just wanting to say a bunch of things, and most of it comes down to psychology based stuff. So it's easier for me to just not have to plan around people's schedule and stuff like that, you know? So I think I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to let Scientology win. I'm not going to be
No.
quiet, but I'm going to honor myself and honor what makes me feel good at the same time, because
Yeah.
we've had so much, like you mentioned, neglect over the years, that it really is important to like fill up the cup before you pour it, you know?
Yeah. I'm always wondering for your future, like, I know Steve Hasted, who's a therapist and talks about cults in general. Are there any former Scientologists who are psychologists and therapists? And I'm wondering if there's a
No,
role.
it's me.
That's what
No, it's going to be
we
me.
need. Shit, man. Wow, you're gonna have
I
a
know.
super important role, because I could
That's
wonder.
why they've been coming so hard.
Yeah, and dude, I wonder if you create a movement. If there's somebody who, is 19 years old and they just got out a week ago and been watching your videos, and maybe they're watching us and they're like, God, yeah, I do know how to. This is the good thing about Scientology: control my own emotions, view things objectively, take out my personal obstruction. But now I can actually use it to help people, and I could take it away from, okay, this is our God, whether it be L. Ron Hubbard or Dianetics or whatever it might be. And God, that's a scary thing, because it's like Scientology gave them the perfect training to turn it against them and help people that want to
Yeah,
escape their grasp. It's a pretty
totally.
thing about
I
you.
think I hope that is happening right now. I hope there's somebody watching the videos. The thing is we don't usually know until about 10 years later, because they're
Yes,
so
sure.
scared. That was me watching the videos, not talking out, like just watching. I wouldn't even comment because I know that Scientology would be hacking the internet. I was honestly so scared. So
Right.
if somebody's watching right now, they're watching us, they're not probably going to let us know. Otherwise, they're going to lose their parents.
Wow.
So
Right.
it's kind of cool because we won't see the uh effects right away, but
Right.
they're watching. People are watching and changes are being made. And if nothing else, I'm making videos about mental health. So the people who are Scientologists whose job it is to terrorize me, they're learning something.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. But that's powerful. I mean, after post degree, I mean, it could be in 5 years, 3 years, like, 10 people a day, uh, 10 people a day, or not a day, 10 people a week get an hour from you that really makes, and they're coming out of Scientology, that really allows them to be
Yeah.
successful in their life, and first gives them the skills to be confident, but then gives them the skills to take the tangible next step to start having relationships or making enough to live or whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
not only do you know about cults like Hassan did, but you know about their specific language and their specific calling. God, that's powerful.
Yeah. There isn't
I'm
there
glad you're here.
isn't a
Yeah.
specialist. Yeah. So it's really cool. I mean, there's people
Yeah.
who are cult specialists, and I have
Yes.
gone to them as,
Sure. Sure.
but there's nobody that I know of who has ever done it this way. And I'm hopefully going to be entering a master's program pretty soon in
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
work.
Good for
My
you.
title right now is residential counselor.
Cool. Okay.
So
You're already
I'm
doing
proud
counseling.
of yeah,
Respect. Good on you.
yeah. Thank you. And I never, as a small Scientology child, never thought I would be one of the psychs, like the
Yeah.
bad people, the bad psychs, but I love the role.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine you would. How can you not? And that's the thing. It's like, Tiff aside, I'd imagine the Aftermath Foundation or Aaron, like, yeah, they refer those people to you potentially, and you could really try to help them. Here's another interesting thing: being involved in
Yeah.
Scientology for so long. Where do you see Scientology in 5 years? Do you think it'll even exist? Because the house of cards is crumbling. Some
5 years?
TikTok,
Yes.
yeah, has chipped away at them. It probably will exist, but I
It's
wonder. Do you think do
it's gonna exist.
you think their numbers will be cut in half, or do you think it won't be that dramatic? So right now it's like 30,000. It's still the
No.
population of. Okay, so you think it's gonna
They're not, I don't think their numbers have dropped, to be honest. I think
Yeah,
what
yeah,
happens is they have so much money, they've keep investing in properties. And so they keep collecting properties all over the world, right?
right,
They're kept afloat by only probably 30 super fucking rich people. Like there's
right.
really, really, really rich
Thank
people
you,
who
Grant
own
Cardone.
medical
Probably even more rich than
pharma. Yeah.
that.
And
Right.
get like
Yeah.
tithes off of, which is ironic, like the medical big pharma industry. It's wild, and they
Isn't
claim to hate
that
it.
is ironic. That's funny.
Yeah, it's super ironic, but I don't know. I think that it's always gonna be around because it's a religion that people love to grab onto, just like Satanism, to
Right.
say this is a religion and this is religious freedom. And if you can't, because honestly,
Yeah.
you can look at both sides of it, right?
Right.
And people love to just use Scientology as an example of why we need religious freedom. You get the atheists and you get all these people who jump on the side of like, can't shut Scientology down. They had an FBI inquest a long time ago and nothing has
Right.
happened.
Nothing. Right.
And it's pretty frustrating.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty frustrating. But
Right.
I think it's gonna be exactly where it is. I think that it is
Interesting.
gonna go down in my lifetime. Like in our lifetime, we will see it completely change. But
Right.
they're the kind of people who like, how what's his name is in jail and they're still
Yeah.
listening and they're still like they're the
Yeah.
kind of people who when
Warren
David
Jeffs.
Miscavige goes to jail, yeah,
Right.
they're the
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
people who, when David Miscavige goes to jail, they will still listen
Doesn't matter.
and
Right.
do it. So it's pretty scary.
Right. I wonder if he'd care enough, if he's not making money, but he probably will. It's probably about control for him, and it's much deeper.
He's a second gen himself.
Right. He is.
He grew up in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Dad went away from it, obviously. But right. Right. The
Well,
question?
at the end of his life, but his dad was in it for a very, very
forever.
long time.
A question that everybody gets asked who has some experience in Scientology: do you think David Miscavige believes in everything about Scientology and believes in his mission, or do you think he just likes the power?
I've heard people say both, and they're people who knew him, so it's hard to know. I think he does believe in the tech. I think he thinks the tech is real, but he knows that he's cutting corners. Like he knows that
sloppy,
he's changed it a little bit, and he's kind of like, reissuing things that shouldn't have been reissued with a little bit of changes, but I do think he's a believer.
Here, here's just a question. What OT level do you get to? If I don't know if it's personal, what like operating level, OT level did he get to? Like OT 8 or obviously not that
Oh,
far.
David Miscavige?
No, you. I'm saying for you. I was just curious. When
Oh,
you
I'm not OT. That costs so much money.
oh,
Like
so that's a
to
whole, even
get to
OT
OT
1 is
level.
like is a huge thing. That's it. I never knew
Oh
that.
yeah. No,
OT
you
4
have to
was
go
like,
through
oh,
so
that's
much
interesting.
to
So
get
even
there.
OT 1, right, because that's the base of you're in
Yeah.
operating Satan, so that's a whole nother
Yeah.
special thing, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
My
interesting. Right.
parents are OT. Yeah, my
They're
parents
OT,
are both
okay.
on their OTs.
Do they ever
Yeah,
like use
they're
that
all
against
high up
you?
there.
Like, listen to me, I'm an OT.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So it gives that authority. Right.
But they're also like, hold on, wait a second. Don't worry, we're gonna get a parking spot because I'm OT.
How does it even work? They just wait for somebody to leave. They're like, yeah, that was me.
Sometimes it works. I don't know how, but it would work sometimes. So
Well, that's
there's
the thing
power in our words sometimes.
well, that's the other thing too that people don't really think about that as well. Like for Scientology, is there an almost supernatural belief in themselves aside from the religious stuff? But like, do they really feel they could will a parking space or like move shit? Or
Yes,
that's
that's
fast.
the
I hadn't even
joke.
thought about
Like they
right,
actually believe that they make ashtrays levitate.
right, right. Right. I just
Yeah.
never seen that.
Yeah. Well, I've been in the room. I've watched people actually yelling at the ashtrays. I have not seen the
Whoa.
ashtrays levitate
It's just yeah,
though.
poor ashtray.
Yeah, poor ashtrays. I know.
God, that's fascinating. Right. That's why there's so much weirder than even the other. Like at least the Jehovah's Witnesses aren't saying they could levitate anything.
Yeah. No, we're a bunch of freaks. We're like
Yeah.
totally weird about it.
Oh, here's one last thing I wanted to ask you about Scientology, being in a Scientology school. Um, Obviously, L. Ron Hubbard had a lot of ill will towards anybody in the LGBTQ community. Were you ever taught in school? Was there ever a gay straight alliance? Was there ever any conversation about that? Or was it just something that was kind of ignored?
That's something that I got in a lot of heat bringing up all the
Nope.
time because I'm very LGBTQ plus friendly and
That's
I'm very
mine's
always
right.
have been.
So yeah,
Right.
right.
And I got talked to all the time because I saw so many people who wanted to be members of the community but couldn't
Right.
because of
Wow.
Scientology. So they were in the
Shot
closet
themselves
for
in the
so
foot.
long.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, they were in the closet and the kids were just completely like there wasn't conversations about that. To answer your question, no. It
Wow.
was more like um just shove it down. If you're
Right.
feeling those ways, just don't talk about it, you
There's
know?
Book of Mormon, there's a musical. Turn it off like a light switch. Turn it off. It's like kind of the same thing. Yeah. It's a nifty
My
list.
God, yeah.
Same.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. I'll send you that.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It was one of the crosses that I died on, basically. It was
Wow,
my
respect.
allyship for the LGBT.
Good for
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
So you never wanted to compromise on that. And you're like, listen, if I can't openly be
Never.
allies to these people, like,
Yeah.
God, I admire that. But then like, it's even worth risking the relationship with your family and your parents to be true to
Yeah.
who you are. A
They
lot of
knew.
people,
They would always try to
right?
they would try to be like, look, honey, I knew a gay guy in Scientology once. I'm like, no,
That's
you
funny.
didn't.
Like,
Like,
I have that one
stop with the
black friend.
lies.
Yeah, right, right, right. That's
Yeah.
funny. But I
It's
admire that.
been so fun chatting, Dodge.
Likewise, likewise. Yeah, I only sadly have a minute left. I could talk to you for like another
I
4 hours.
know.
But I guess we'll have
Well,
to.
we'll have to plan something else
Yes,
too.
yes. Glad to know you're single. Note to self. Figured you weren't, but yeah. So that might be fun to get a drink. And regardless, I'd love to have you back on. But really
Awesome.
interesting stuff. Admire what you do for people getting out of this cult. Admire what you do for animals. You're just a light. There are not a lot of lights in the world. So, lights should get to know other lights. So yeah, you're very cool. And I hope this is the first of many chats together. And yeah, I think that the audience, a lot of them knows who you are. And Big fan of yours. And tell me again your YouTube, so just in case they want to go to yours.
It is The Gray Zone with Vanessa LaRose.
Cool. Awesome. And you want to
Yeah.
do the GoFundMe link, or can they find that on the Gray Zone?
Yeah, they can find it on there.
Cool.
I have a GoFundMe and a wish list and all that cool stuff.
Beautiful. Okay. I'll send them all over. You're the best. Keep on fighting.
Okay.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care.